The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you at Hail Varsity Radio. We're here on the road today at Dan Hartog Field. Appreciate you tuning in. A little further Legion baseball. Some frustrated Husker fans as we speak right now up at Charles Schwab Field. Rutgers has surged ahead now 5-3, and they've done it with the old ball on base with the bases loaded. 2 runs walked in by Shea Shanaman. That's after a play that Bryce Matthews coulda, shoulda, woulda made at shortstop on a throw over to first. And all sorts of drama right now for Nebraska baseball. 1 out, top of 7. Huskers jumped out 3-0 and trail 5-3. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hail Varsity Radio. You're welcome to stream the show. Catch us different ways. Can do so. The Hail Varsity YouTube channel is alive and well for you. The Hail Varsity Radio Twitter at HVarsity Radio, and KFOR Sports Twitter is there. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240, or can email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com. We'll dive into plenty of topics. The Big Red Army trying to find their way to Boulder. How has the fight gone with single season tickets or single game tickets to purchase in Colorado? We have an update on that. Nebraska, as we talked about yesterday, able to add some depth on the offensive line from the University of Utah. We'll get there. A probe and some disturbing information when it comes to gambling and college athletes that's out. We'll spend some time with that. Mike Babcock is with us here in about 15 minutes as a fly ball to right is caught. Runner tags from third. Rutgers now up 6-3. Runners at second and third with 2 out. So I'll let you sigh, a big sigh if you're a Nebraska baseball fan. Elijah, what a microcosm of 2023 for Nebraska baseball if they don't get this turned around.
Yeah, microcosm. That's the right way of putting it, is take a 3-0 lead early, and boom, the rest of the game you have no more hitting, and your pitching as you get into your bullpen starts to suffer. You hit the nail on the head. A microcosm. You're playing a team that they're a very beatable opponent whenever you take that lead. Now, is 3 runs with how your pitching staff's been playing all year enough to get the job done? No, I don't think this Husker baseball team is going to finish with 3 runs. I think they're probably going to push across 1 or 2 more, and I hate to say it, but based on how this game's going, we've seen it plenty this year. They'll fight to the end, but they'll come up just short. That's how it goes, and it's self-inflicted errors. This inning kind of started with, I shouldn't say it started, but it got out of hand with Bryce Matthews not being able to make a play at first. He fields a chopper, throws it over to first, not in time. You walk the next batter, bases loaded. You walk another batter, now you walk in a run, and the wheels start falling off. And that's been the story of Husker baseball. Is you get that 1 inning a game, the wheels kind of fall off from the pitching staff. You give the other dugout some life, and now the momentum is flipped, and you don't stand a chance anymore. That's kind of how it feels right now. Is with a couple innings left, Husker baseball feels down and out. Whenever you haven't been able to get a run since the first inning, the momentum's flipped to the side of Rutgers. What are you going to do? How are you going to respond? I mean, this is the type of moment that shows your mettle. What do you want to do in the Big Ten tournament? Do you want to make a run at winning the whole thing, getting yourself a shot at postseason, or are you going to roll over and be done? That's what is going to be answered here in about the next half hour.
I don't think they just dig themselves too deep a hole is what it comes down to, and they don't need to pay tribute to Seabiscuit. All right, if you've ever seen the movie where Seabiscuit would kick it into gear once Seabiscuit would let the old horse get even with him. Seabiscuit would make side-eye contact, as horses do, and then put it into 6th gear and win the race. It's 2 things for Nebraska baseball and really postseason baseball. It's situational hitting. Who does well with 2 outs? Those tough situations with runners in scoring position. Nebraska's left 7 on, as has Rutgers, but Nebraska's 1 error spilled over into to 3 runs this inning. Right? I mean, it's compound interest here the wrong way with Nebraska, but they've had instances where they've left. They had a situation with some of their heavy hitters up to bat, 2 on, 2 out, bases full, 2 out. And then another bottom of the 5th, they had 2 on with Bryce up to bat. And I know he's coming back from a bit of a strained back, but Husker Baseball needs to get it figured out and fixed right now as they're down by 3 as leadoff man is on as he gets plunked on the right shoulder, beg your pardon. So a decent start here for Nebraska. Let's talk here about the adventure in Boulder, September 9th. And interesting how things have gone. And I retweeted from our friends at Husk Guys. They are asking, okay, so tell me how the pursuit of Colorado tickets have gone today. And I think okay for Nebraska. I think some of the tickets that were available later on in the day were between $300 and $900. Maybe they were suite seats. I'm not quite sure. But it's a situation where Nebraska fans, I think, for a time, crashed the Colorado Athletic Department website where you go and get your orders in. Single game tickets went on sale today, and Nebraska fans are up to any challenge, Elijah, with trying to be kept out of a facility or venue. It didn't happen at South Bend. It didn't happen in Boulder in 2019. And Nebraska fans are going to pay what they need to pay to get out to Boulder for this showdown against 2 old rivals in the Big 12 and in the Big 8. We'll talk to Charlie McBride in less than an hour. We're going to attempt to reach Mike Schuhart from Wilderness Ridge. Shuey's just been slammed with all sorts of events at Wilderness Ridge. Totally get that. Babber's here in 10 minutes. Eric Francis going to join us. Is excited to spend time with Eric. He is going to have just some incredible photography, not only in this recent Hail Varsity issue, but also the yearbook is just around the corner, and some of his exquisite photos. The eye test pod also with him and Brady Oltman's going to drop. And that is going to be something to talk about. And then a Jock Doc to round out. So 489-1240, 489-1240. We've talked about expensive ticket prices. About a year ago, I was out in Denver and was thinking about going to one of the Avs Stanley Cup final games. I thought better of it. Went to a Rockies game and still made out with less money spent on ballpark beers than what I would have spent to get to a game 4 with the Stanley Cup. But it would have been really cool to say I went to a Stanley Cup final before Elijah Herbel with his Avs. Didn't do that. But, $300 per seat, if that's what you got to spend, or $500 or $900, if you got them through the university, I think you're secure. But to be honest, Colorado, Elijah, was trying to do everything in their power to keep this from happening. Their problem was to say they were going to be able to play defense against the Nebraska fan base.
Well, quickly here, I just want to make a point because I've had to look into this too. NBA Finals tickets, the average price at Ball Arena for Game 1 of the NBA Finals, the low price of just over $4,000. Obviously, that's averaging ticket prices. There's going to be cheaper ones you can find up in the nosebleeds, but $4,000 is the average ticket price for NBA Finals Game 1 at Ball Arena on June 1st. That's just a touch out of my price range, so I will be watching from the great city of Lincoln, Nebraska. As for this Colorado game, $315 seems to be the get-in price. If you want to get in, that seems to be the minimum price that you have to pay, and that's just the way of the world with ticket prices, especially in the United States. You look elsewhere in sports across the globe, in Europe, in Asia even as well, ticket prices tend to be a little bit lower. As for the United States, they just keep on growing and growing and growing, and people are willing to keep on paying the prices. So I think it's going to keep on going that way. And with Colorado, they talked about it a couple months ago. We don't know how we're going to pay Deion his contract. Now, I looked into this just a little bit. I did some quick math. Deion Sanders' salary in year one is $5.5 million. That's according to the Denver Post. The total price of his contract is going to be $29.5 million. Rounding down, the capacity of Folsom Field is about 50,000. It's just over 50,000. So I rounded down to 50,000. And I also, which conservatively, set every single ticket at $300. If you sold every single ticket for $300, which Husker fans who have looked for tickets, most of the seats in that stadium were more than $300, but I'm going to go conservative. 50,000 times $300 is about $15 million in gate ticket sales. Obviously, there's other expenses to be paid there, but it's not a joke whenever people are joking. They're joking, but it's really not a joke whenever you say, man, Colorado's looking to pay off Deion's first year with this Nebraska game. It's 100% true. If you make $15 million in gate sales, probably going to be more than that once you factor in club seats, field level seats, all of that. We're probably talking in the $20 million range. Deion's salary in year one is $5.5 million. Realistically, with just that Nebraska game, you can pay off Deion's salary. So it's not a joke to say Colorado is using Husker fans to pay off their head coach. That is 100% what I believe to be the case right now. With a potential of $20 million in gate sales, you can pay off Deion's contract in one game.
So here's the rundown, and this is a tweet that's part of the timeline, again, from our friends at Husk Guys, and he wanted Nebraska fans to post your order confirmation, as they can't wait to flood the stadium. What I need to have happen, as Golden, Colorado is not very far from Boulder. 2 of the 3 times I've been to Boulder in my 20s, Colorado, Nebraska, the game turned into drama. Nebraska won, and they weren't great Colorado teams, but they put up a ton of fight. Nebraska fans drank Colorado out of Coors Light, and you're 15 minutes from the brewery. So have reinforcements ready is what I'm saying. The best available seat price range, $315 to $924. The Byron White Club is $924. Zone 1 is $650. The Flatiron Club, $625. We'll talk to Barnett tomorrow. We'll see if he can't get us a tasty spot in the Byron White Club when we're out there. Zone 2 is $505. Zone 3, $420, appropriate. Zone 4 is $405. Zone 5 is $315. I want the Kenny Rogers suite. Kenny Rogers would always show up for Nebraska-Colorado games. ABC and Keith Jackson had come back from commercial break. Kenny Rogers in that sweet white beard would be in a suite with a Coors in one hand and wave at the camera. And away he went. No one went to hold him. So there you go.
Well, what's interesting today is to me, as I mentioned before, Colorado using Husker fans to pay off Deion. They've actually said you have to have a Colorado address, or at least one that's not within the state of Nebraska, to purchase tickets for this game, your billing address. So there's been Husker fans setting up P.O. boxes in Colorado, setting up P.O. boxes in other states in order to make that your billing address. So don't be fooled. Colorado knows that Husker fans are going to be filling up this stadium. Like, there's no way around it. A whole bunch of universities have tried and failed to keep Husker fans out of their stadium. That's just how it's going to go. I kind of respect it. They're saying, you know what? We're just going to use the Husker fans to pay off our head coach. I on one hand, I say it's bad for the game of college football as a whole to have ticket prices this high, but from Colorado's point of view, I tip my cap to them. That's a smart business strategy.
Not only will Nebraska pay for Deion, they'll pay for the next wave of NIL slush fund 5-star. Congrats to Gabe Swanson.
Ties us up.
He did a solid for Nebraska baseball. It's a new ball game as the dugout explodes. Gabe Swanson launching one 402 feet at Charles Schwab Field. A 3-run shot to tie things up at 6 apiece. That is big time for Nebraska. Again, the long ball doing it. And, hey, we were just not bad-mouthing, but thought bubbling a lot of dejected Nebraska fans here in the bottom of the 7th. Swanson swung on it. It was a pitch that was low and away. He kind of swiped at it and then golfed that son of a you-know-what out to left field.
110 miles an hour off the bat.
It was a chicks dig the long ball moment, and good for the Big Red. See if they can keep putting some runs on.
What you need now?
Rosie's.
I would say what you need now quickly. I don't want to step on your toes here, but what you need now, you need a 1-2-3 top of the eighth. Get that momentum right back. That's what you need to end this ball game. You need momentum.
You need another run first, and then, yes, a 1-2-3. But we're at Rosie's, win, lose, or draw for Nebraska baseball. The hope is this. Nebraska finds a way to come back. You come pour one with us tomorrow at Rosie's, 10th and P downtown location. We're there 4 to 6. We're celebrating the last day of school for you parents, or the summer of terror if you got to watch your kids all summer. Either way, it's a road show tomorrow. Hail Varsity at Rosie's, 4 to 6, 10th and P downtown location. We want to see you there. And also, if Nebraska comes back, they are in the winner's bracket against Maryland. That game time starts at 6. If they can't survive this today, they play at 10 tomorrow. But come see us tomorrow. Rosie's downtown, 4 o'clock. Mike Babcock's on the way. It's Hail Varsity presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to the folks at LPS and Dan Hartog for letting us sneak in here a little early. JV Baseball, Southwest and North Star, as Junior is, I think, doing some calisthenics in the pitcher's in the bullpen. It's hilarious. I'm not doing calisthenics. I'm in the air conditioning. That's all right. Husker Baseball, 2 on, 2 out. Threatening again. Cole Evans at the dish. We'll keep you posted on how the Big Red rolls here as they've come back from down 6-3 after jumping out 3-0. Mike Babcock with us, historian, author, Hall of Famer, Mr. Husker Football, knows a thing or two about Nebraska baseball as well as MD Babs on Twitter's where you find him. Mike, how we doing? Thanks for the time.
Hey, I'm doing well. I look better on the phone.
I think you look fine on video as well. We won't get into the sabotage that is internet right now.
No.
But hey, thank you for coming on today. And I want to get your take on this Nebraska baseball team. And this season has been ups and downs, and playing up to opponents like a Vandy or playing down to opponents you're better than. Nebraska would not have placed well in the Summit League this year, and that's not a knock on the Summit League. And now they're in a dogfight after being comfortable a while against Rutgers. How much Pepto has Will Bolt gone through this season?
Well, quite a bit probably, and this game is probably reflective of how the season has gone. I mean, they started off really strong with the 3-run home run, and Fisher hits a 3-run home run. You think that, hey, they're off and running, and then they fall behind 6-3, and then they tie it up. I mean, it's back and forth. They show that grit, I guess, that Will Bolt teaches, but they've got to be successful in this tournament in order to have any hope at all of getting in the NCAA tournament, and by having success, I mean probably get to the championship game and probably win it, actually.
And Mike, in your opinion, does Nebraska have the pieces to make that kind of run? That's kind of one of the things we've talked about with Bryce Matthews and Max Anderson. You think they have the hitting for it, but then on a day when the hitting's doing well, the pitching staff isn't doing well, or you don't get a great pitching performance from your starting pitcher, do you think the Huskers are going to be able to put it all together and make a run, or do you think we're too far gone for that, and it's just not the right roster this year to make that kind of deep run?
That's a good question, Elijah, because, obviously Nebraska has the offense to do it. I mean, you've got guys like Matthews and Anderson and Swanson and Fisher today, and I mean they can hit the ball out of the ballpark, and they're aggressive offensively, but I just don't know if the pitching's going to hold up. And you've got to have guys be able to come back in a tournament like this. You've got pitching is really important because of the number of games that you play in a shorter period of time in order to get to that championship. So, I think there's a big question mark there whether Nebraska can just hammer its way to the championship. It's difficult to do, I would say, but everybody else is dealing with the same kind of a thing. So by the time you get down the line a couple of games, pitching becomes an issue for everybody, I would say.
Well, Nebraska has been able to flex all year with their all-conference performers. They'll have All-Americans and Matthews, and, of course, Matthews right now has a moment to be a hero. 2 outs, bases loaded. Rutgers has walked the last 2 pitchers, and even with 2 outs, they grazed a Nebraska batter. Wasn't sure if that replay went the way it was supposed to, but a chance for Bryce Matthews to do what he's done all year, and that's deliver a kill shot with that power.
It's a chance to prove why you're first team All Big Ten, why you're a chance at having an All-American type season. Like, you made a mistake in the top half of the 7th. What every single baseball player wants after that is a chance to make it right, and he's got that now. Bottom of the 7th, 2 outs, bases loaded. You're first team All Big Ten. You're 0 for 3 on the day. You got to go show everybody why you're first team All Big Ten, and that you need to make up for that mistake. That's what baseball is all about. Mistakes are going to be made. Can you make up for your own mistakes?
Well, don't press in this situation. Mike, the Hail Varsity yearbook is coming out, and I know a feature you spent a lot of time on that really made you smile was Memorial Stadium turning 100. What can you share with us without giving away everything?
It's just interesting. Here's what I'll say, that going clear back to Jumbo Steam, who coached at Nebraska from 1911 to 1915, and he had so much success. I think his teams were 35-2-3 during his time here, and there was talk about building a stadium then. Concrete and steel stadium, because there was so much interest in Nebraska football. And then he took off for Indiana for a little bit, and then that was a bit of drama in itself, in that Indiana offered him, I think, $4,250. He was making $3,500 at Nebraska. A bunch of boosters stepped in and said, we'll make up most of that. It was a little under what Indiana was offering, and I might be a little bit short there. But and the university faculty stepped in and said, no way is a football coach going to be making more than faculty members. That's ridiculous. They turned down this offer from the business people, so he left. But there was talk back in 1915 about building it. Then you have the intervention of First World War, the Spanish flu pandemic. Kind of got set on hold, and then after the war, wasn't just at Nebraska, it was across the country. Several schools built stadiums in honor of those that had served in World War I, and that's kind of how the motivation got started. And they raised money with the university students and people in alumni in Lincoln, alumni in Omaha, alumni across the state, faculty. It was quite a project, but everybody was on board, and that's how they got it done.
An update from Omaha, Mike. Bryce Matthews works a walk, and now Casey Burnham hit by pitch. The Huskers lead by 2 as Max Anderson steps up to the plate. There's your update from Omaha.
Yeah, there you go. Get hit by a pitch and a walk. That's good with the bases loaded. There's how you do it, I guess.
The good old Big Ten baseball.
Yeah.
Am I watching travel ball, or am I watching Division I, where there's walks, there's home runs, there's hit by pitch, there's walked in runs? Got to be going nuts.
That's how Rutgers broke the tie, right? Was a bases loaded walk and a hit by pitch, and
then They took every gift imaginable and capitalized. Now you got big ol' Anderson up to flex a little bit here. Mike Babcock's with us at Hail Varsity Radio. Mike, a thought here on Nebraska's new transfer from Utah, Knack. Good size, great wingspan, some pretty impressive schools that went after him out of Utah. And Whittingham usually doesn't miss on linemen. I don't know that this is a miss, but it just wasn't a right fit anymore for Knack, and Nebraska able to add a potential long-term piece.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting because, the talk with the offensive line up to this point was kind of like, we'll play with the guys that we have. We're going to move forward with that. That's the way it's going to work. And I kind of got the sense that, maybe there weren't going to be, they weren't looking for anybody in the transfer portal, anything like that at that point. But that's going to be that's a good addition, I think, and it supplements what I thought looked like a pretty good place to start with the offensive line, given the experience that they have. If they can keep guys healthy, I think they've got a chance to have a pretty good offensive line, and this just adds to that thought.
Mike Babcock's with us here at Hail Varsity Radio, and I actually was doing some research last night because I looked at the name Knaak. Kyle Whittingham video from his recruitment, I believe, shows it's Knaak. It's Tyler Knaak, if I get that correct. That's what Kyle Whittingham called him. That's what I'm going to go with unless I hear otherwise. So Tyler Knaak is the transfer out of Utah. And Mike, what do you make of Nebraska's strategy in the transfer portal this year with both Jacob Hood and Knaak, two guys that you don't think they're going to be ready for Big Ten action just yet, but they both have big bodies, big frames that a guy like Donovan Rilo can work with, and a couple of guys that could be contributors down the line. Nebraska, they went after a lot of big guys in the Frost tenure on their offensive line. They stick with that. Is that what's needed in the Big Ten, or what's your take on what type of offensive line is needed to succeed in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I think you need big physical guys. And Nebraska has some of those. That's one of the things in spring drills. Gunnar Gatula, here's a freshman, and he's learning the left tackle spot. And Matt Rule says, that left tackle is probably the most difficult position to learn on the offensive line. And, Gatula was doing a good job. You always assume that the freshmen are going to come in and probably redshirt, to develop, but they talked as if he had an opportunity as well. So, yeah, I think you need those big guys. That's what he is. You're not quite as heavy as the two transfers. But, I think those are the kind of guys that you need. And if you look at who the prospects are that are going to be playing, guys like Ben Hart and Prochaska, they're big guys, tall and have good weight.
Mike Babcock with us, Hail Varsity Radio at MD Babs on Twitter. Mike, we'll get caught up with you next week. Appreciate you jumping on and talking some ball with us. We'll see if the Huskers can hang on here as Gabe Swanson is back at the plate after that 3-run shot. 3 runs walked in by Rutgers. They have gone back to the bullpen. Nebraska now leads by a field goal, Mike. 9-6.
Now that is a Big Ten score right there. 9-6. Sounds like Iowa's playing football out there.
It's an Iowa-Illinois score. We'll see if
they brought in Tristan Alvano and he kicked another one.
I know. Bang. There we go. Mike, you take care. Thanks for the time, bud.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Appreciate Mike Babcock. Another Husker weighs in on social media. We'll tell you who about his time in Lincoln.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. My old buddy Nate the Great, Nate Payne, is wanting me to work Barnett for an exclusive golf outing. I'm lucky Barney talks to me once a week. I don't know if he'll ever let me golf with him, Nate, but I like where your head's at. Nate's thinking about Boulder. which is all good. We'll be out there. Of course, the awesome event going on with Gary Michaels, Gary Novotny, Tommy Frazier, Friday night in Estes Park, and then pregame and postgame with our friends at Blur Parties. We're locked in there exclusively. So pretty nice to get that looked at. The Graduates where we're going to be at for pre and post when it comes to the season opener in Minneapolis. So we're there Thursday and into Friday. Nebraska trying to make PJ Fleck cry. 489-1240, 489-1240. The Huskers getting the hold my beer treatment from Rutgers with runs walked in. And you have 6 scored by Nebraska in the bottom of the 7th. They lead at 9-6. Elijah, we'll see if Nebraska-Rutgers outscores Nebraska-Rutgers football this season. That was a 14-13 ball game. Let's see how crazy and weird we get.
Well, it comes down to the Husker bullpen. You got to get 6 outs. Do you have a guy in your bullpen or 2 guys in your bullpen that can go get 6 outs? How do you follow up that huge bottom half of the 7th? You've ripped back momentum. Can you go get 1, 2, 3? If you can get 1, 2, 3 in the 8th, I don't want to call a game over because baseball is the special sport where it doesn't matter what the score is, doesn't matter how much time is left. You still got to throw strikes. You still got to give the offense a chance to go out and hit it. So what does the Husker pitching staff do? Needing 6 outs to go advance to the winner's bracket on Thursday. That's where my mind goes right now because from what we've seen from Husker Baseball this year, 6 outs is far from a guarantee. Not to be too much of a downer. I was a big downer in the first segment of the show.
You're a realist. You're a realist.
I've watched too many baseball games. I've been behind the plate for too many baseball games. 6 outs, that's still a lot of work left to be done. It's less than 27, but you still got some work that needs to be done. So which Husker pitcher is going to step up and go get you 6 outs? That's the question that remains to me. I guess we're going to find out.
Kyle Perry on the hill, the lefty, the senior, heartbeat of this squad, vocal leader. It's 2-2 count, 3-2 count right now. Misses high and away, ball 4. So Nebraska starts off the inning like Rutgers did. Let's talk about Tyreke Johnson. Tyreke Johnson is on social media. Tyreke Johnson was a 5-star major league talent that was at Ohio State. He transferred to Nebraska a couple of years ago. Have not seen nor heard from Tyreke Johnson on the field briefly for a short time. Got moved over to wide receiver. Let me see if I got all of my data points right. And now Tyreke Johnson on Twitter tweeting out, hey, I'm open to talk. Willing to do an open and honest interview about my time at Nebraska, why I stopped playing, and the truth, capital truth, behind Husker NIL and how they're doing people. So we have not sent a direct message to Tyreke Johnson. I'm intrigued.
Well,
I'd listen to the interview. I would read the interview. I don't know that I want to do the interview. It's not that I don't want to know, but NIL's murky. NIL, there's a collective, but there's not public numbers out there. There's a lot of, well, this kid's getting X amount of money for quarterbacking at Tennessee. Okay. Nico the Great at $8 million. Well, really, it's Nico's making probably a couple million. And if Nico doesn't win a job, Nico's NIL will probably go away because you're not going to just hand out money if the kid's not performing. Eventually, the valve gets shut off. Don't you think, Elijah? It's a two-way street between payment and performance, I would believe.
You would believe, but I don't think that it's presented to these kids that way whenever they're in the transfer portal or in the recruitment process. Whenever you're recruiting a kid,
there's upfront money, though. There's upfront money you're going to get without even playing it down to get you here. Or you have that opportunity to sign, right? But as far as continuing to cash in, it can all go away if you don't do your job.
Well, I'm honestly more intrigued with what Tyreke had to say about why he is leaving, why he doesn't play anymore. I don't think that can be fully NIL. NIL is a great boost. I don't think a lack of NIL payments is going to take away your love for the game of football. And I'm not saying he's lost his love for the game of football, but whenever you quit the sport altogether, especially on the heels of that tweet from Noah Pola-Gates' mother yesterday saying, you know what, middle finger to Frost Shenander and Coach Travis Fisher for how they treated my son during his time at Nebraska. I'm paraphrasing for her. I don't want to put words into her mouth, but that's essentially the heart of what her tweet was. Now with Tyreke Johnson, another member of that secondary, coming out today, I wonder what some of these guys are talking about behind the scenes and what that defensive backroom actually looked like over the past couple of years, because Travis Fisher's the guy that we sang the praises of. He's the guy who probably had the most consistent room during his time at Nebraska. When you compare it to the rest of the team, that defensive backroom, you knew just about what you're going to get. They put more guys in the NFL than any other position group. We look at Cam Taylor, Britt DiCaprio, Buda, Lamar Jackson, still getting some chances in the NFL. You have Quentin Newsome, a guy that was developed by Travis Fisher that you assume is going to get an NFL look somewhere as well, either next year or in a couple of years down the line. So Travis Fisher is a guy that we sang the praises of, but now you have former players, players' mothers that are coming out and saying, you know what, it wasn't as it seemed on the surface. So I am really curious about what this means. The NIL, that's a little bit less surprising. We've seen countless stories from across the country over the past year or two about how NILs and all that it's cracked up to be. You know what, we're not always getting our payments. What we were promised isn't what we actually end up getting. We've heard that time and time again. I think you'd be fooling yourself if you thought that similar things haven't occurred at Nebraska. That's just how NIL is across the country right now. But I'm curious about what was going on behind the scenes in that defensive backroom and really on the team as a whole.
Listen, the guys that have played in Travis Fisher's secondary are guys that have come in and earned it. He always had a running set of standings. Who performed well at practice? You got to do it every day to keep your spot or to gain ground. I don't think the door was ever shut on being able to find your way onto the field. Did you know your assignment? Were you a good tackler? Could you force turnovers? Could you cover? Could you do your job? And did you know the defense? You got to know what the other front seven are doing to play in the secondary, presumably, right? That's how every defensive coordinator preaches. You got to know what everyone's doing on defense and not just freelancing. I look at guys, and this is presumptuous of me, but I look at Noah Pola-Gates and I look at Tyreke Johnson, and those are guys with a ton of hype that just never saw the field, and the guys that were in front of them are playing on Sundays. And there are guys that are better that coaches felt more comfortable with, trusted more.
But last year, think back to the first 4 games last year. The secondary wasn't playing well by any means, and we still didn't see these guys on the field. So no. I do wonder. I want to hear these guys' side of the story. What happened?
I do. I would have, and coaches, obviously, unfortunately, they'll never be able to tell their side. It's just a one-sided answer right now. We'll wind down an hour 1 next on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this first hour, it's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency at Dan Hartog. Today, JV Baseball as Southwest and North Star set to go here in a little bit. Nebraska may be getting hosed here as there's 1 out. There's bases 2 on, I should say. Kyle Perry chased. It's still 9-7 Nebraska, but the Huskers able to roll a double play. And the throw looks like it beat the runner by about a half step, Elijah. Put your umpire glasses on, my friend. And you had the turn from third to second. And the throw seems in time. And you've got a challenge by Rutgers. So Nebraska would love to get out of this inning here with just 1 run of damage.
And a great double play. It was a chopper to third. Looked like it was going to be a very, very tough play to turn to. They get the out at second. They're under review right now out at first. One of the biggest misconceptions in baseball. You hear it all the time. The tie goes to the runner. That is nowhere in the rule book. That is nowhere in the umpire's manual. In baseball, there is no such thing as a tie. Whenever you get to the base, somebody was there first. And with video review, it kind of changes things. But if you see a tie on video review, you go to the original call. But in the umpire's mind, there's no such thing as a tie. And really, if there is a tie, in an umpire's point of view, you're going to give the out. That's how it goes. If you say that's a tie, I mean, which you really don't, there's no such thing as a tie. That's one thing that you always hear in baseball. Not the case. This looks about as close to a tie as you can get. And if you're going to do that, if you're going to spend, I think it's been 3 or 4 minutes in review now.
You can't overturn this.
You can't overturn it. That's what I say. If it's that close, you keep the call in the field and you keep the game moving. I know it's tough for Rutgers and it's a big time moment, so you want to get it right. There's not going to be indisputable video evidence here as they're still sitting in the review.
Yeah, you got to go with the call on the field here. We're putting our big red glasses on here. Nebraska-Rutgers has been a bleep show of relief pitching, of walks, and runners left on base. A what not to do with situational hitting. Now, my batting average with runners in scoring position was fine because I never got the opportunity to bat with runners in scoring position. Reminder to get buckled up, hands on the wheel, eyes and mind straight ahead. A driver has one job to do, that's drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Busy hour 2 as we got connected with Charlie McBride. Mr. Blackshirt going to be with us in hour 2 to get things kicked off. We'll get his rundown on the fiasco in Boulder with Nebraska fans trying to infiltrate the Buff ticket department, the athletic department, for single game tickets that are on sale, and a lot of red that found their way in. Prices range between $3.15 and $9.24. Nebraska does get the call. The call stands. Double play for the Big Red to get out of the inning, which is just huge. So Charlie McBride here in about 10 minutes. We'll check in with Eric Francis, staff photographer for Hail Varsity. His podcast with our dear friend Brady Oltman's The Eye Test. Some really good stuff as Francis has done a ton of high-profile big games, those big moments that you love to see and are always in your memory banks, or those iconic moments of still photography. So we'll talk with Eric Francis at 5:25, and a Jock Doc on the way. Hail Varsity Hour 2 continues, presented by Currency.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you, it's hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. We welcome in Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride. A Wednesday with Charlie. Coach, great to run you down. How's the week been for you?
Good. It had a good weekend. Weather was great. And we had one day that wasn't too bad. You know, we had on and off rain, but it was good enough to get my car washed.
Well, send some of that rain our way, but just in between ball games. Not too much, but not too little. And we got to schedule it so it doesn't wash out any baseball this weekend. But it's been a pretty interesting day as Colorado had their single game tickets go on sale today, and buzz around the internet is there's been some technical difficulty internet-wise because of all the Nebraska fans trying to go and invade Boulder September 9th. What do you think of that?
That's good. Well, you know, the thing about it is that it just causes more problems for their part when they make a mountain out of a molehill, you know. And, you know, the thing is he started the year out by, I think, almost at his introduction that he wanted everybody, he didn't want any tickets to be sold to any of the Nebraska fans, and we're going to have the biggest turnout we've ever had. And that's probably about right, since he's the biggest one since I since I played there. It's about.
Well, Charlie, can you believe it that Colorado, I mean, whenever they hired Dion, they said, well, we're not quite sure how we're going to pay him. Well, I think I figured out how they're going to pay him. They're going to jack up the ticket prices for Nebraska-Colorado and let Nebraska fans pay off Dion's salary. That seems to be what's going on today.
Yeah, well, that's probably right. I think I saw, $170, something like that, or something crazy. I mean, but their problem is they don't have any money. I guess the way it sounds when you have to do stuff like that.
I've seen tickets here on social media for anywhere between $315, and secondary market's going to be over $500 a seat. I think I had to pay over $500 for my Notre Dame Nebraska seats back in the year 2000, but it was worth it. Nebraska got the win in South Bend.
Yeah, that's right. I was there, and was there with some guys, and we went back to our where we are right now, to our home here after the game, and they stayed overnight. They had a motorhome, and it was pretty good. And the guy on the TV at 6:00 when we were watching the highlights of the game came on and he said. He was joking, but at the time he didn't quite know. He said, we might have had more Nebraska people in there, so you must have some people must have sold their tickets to the Nebraska people, and we know who you are. It was like, it was kind of at first, we knew who you are was, and then he started laughing and things like that. But that's just the way it is. I mean, that's what happens.
I think I bought mine from a Regent. We had really good seats, better seats than I deserved as a college student, but it worked out well. Charlie McBride's with us. Few minutes at Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, is there a place that you really loved playing or coaching, I should say, on the road? Be it Oklahoma, or did you like playing or the road games to Boulder, or even some of the non-conference games? Was there a favorite spot to take the team?
Well, I don't know if it was a favorite spot. Oklahoma State was always fun because they'd always start to run our backs into the wall there, because the wall was only a few feet away from the stadium. In fact, when we sat in our bench was locked up flat against the backboard. The back of the seats and the bench were the wall, and so it was an interesting place to play. But Oklahoma was always fun. I remember we played down there one time, and I looked across the field, and they had such a mound in their field because of the runoff of their artificial turf that you could see only you couldn't see from their knees down. It was so high. And what happens is the quarterback ends up throwing the ball high, and outcuts and everything, and that's exactly what happened for a while until he got used to the field. I mean, even though he threw before the game, it wasn't the same. I like the New Orange Bowl that when we first went. That's the one I kind of remember the most, is when they changed the Orange Bowl and went to it was the Miami Dolphins Stadium, but it was a kind of modern and different and everything. It was kind of exciting place.
Charlie, it's really pretty interesting to look at, how things are going for Nebraska when we talk about the new facility and where Nebraska's at with NIL. They're pretty poised for a nice jump and an advantage. And then you factor in how Coach Rule wants to do things. Are you pretty optimistic about this first year, or do you think there's going to be some growing pains?
It's hard to say. I think they're on a good track. I don't think that their running game and so forth is going to be as complicated as maybe it was back when I was coaching. We had our offense was, we had a lot of plays and a lot of different ways to block them with line calls and things like that. In fact, one game we had, I think Coach Osborne said we had 60% of the time we audibled. And I don't think that happens in college football that much anymore. I think it's pretty much, you're spread out, and it's, you quarterbacks learn what's going to be open, what the coverage is, and so on and so forth. And the experienced quarterbacks are the ones that are really dangerous.
Charlie, it's interesting to me that the first place your mind went whenever we discussed growing pains was the offense. What do you make of the defense, though? We saw them in the spring game. They really looked to be a step ahead of the offense during the spring, which wasn't too surprising. But when you look at that defense, they're making a complete switch, but they got experience just about every single level of that defense. A couple of defensive linemen who've played a lot of Big Ten football, a couple of linebackers who've played a lot of Big Ten football, and a couple guys in the secondary who've played a lot of Big Ten football. So do you expect growing pains with the defensive scheme, or do you think they're going to be ready to rock and roll come September?
Well, I think they got to be careful how much they put in, right away. I mean, I know that you want your plans, and that's the whole problem with open up and on both sides. But especially with Minnesota, basically they don't know we're gonna line up in it. They don't know what kind of defense exactly we're going to play. They have them, past films of Syracuse, say, for example, and look at how the defense was played there, and that's what they'll have to go on, pretty much that way. And that's the hard thing to do. So the little advantage would go to Nebraska on that part of it. But I think if it starts out, it's hard to say how it's gonna go. But as it starts out with the idea that if they do well and things happen good and things happen, not a lot of mistakes and not a lot of just plain good football and win, then that's going to pull the team together pretty good, I think. And then I really think when you win a conference game to start with, that's really a boost.
Coach, Nebraska was able to get an in-state quarterback commitment over the weekend. Daniel Kalin out of Bellevue West. He was committed to Missouri. He was pretty much the number 2 quarterback on Nebraska's board. And when things didn't go the way they wanted to go with Dylan Raiola for Nebraska staff, they were still able to get a commitment flip from an in-state kid that was going to be off to the SEC. Kalen's a really talented player, but speak to just the job that has to go into communicating with a kid and keeping that fine line there where, hey, we really like you and we want to take you, and you're pretty much our second option on the board without hurting feelings.
Well, he made a decision, I think, probably before that, when we said that we were at, when Raiola was getting so much advertising, and the thing it probably made him feel bad a little bit. He's young, and there's probably some things that were said, how great this kid is, and, but when you get a good player in state like he is, I'll tell you what, and a kid that jumps on it, and the next day or so he commits, I'll take that one, because he really wants to play here. And that's a big, big difference. You didn't have to sit down, and just talk to, tell him all the, the regular recruiting stuff. He just wanted to come to Nebraska, and that's what's important.
Charlie, does it surprise you after what we've seen in the past decade that there's still in-state kids, guys that are high schoolers in Nebraska, that still dream of being Huskers despite the fact that they really, in the time of Husker football, they don't remember any real success.
Yeah, well, that's right. I can go back and, after we warm up, I usually went over to the fence, and there's always some kids there with their dads and stuff. And I don't know how many times I've heard young kids, 7, 8 years old, sit there and say, "Someday I want to be a black shirt, and someday I want to be a Husker." And it was, and then I'd get pictures of them with the ball that I gave them on their mantle or wherever it was and stuff. And so it was, I think that being part of a program, and you can look at it. There's still kids that want to come to Nebraska, even though we're not tearing the world up. But it's going to change. What goes around comes around.
Charlie McBride's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, we'll get you out of here on this, and thanks for catching up with us on a Wednesday. I got to ask you about Nebraska-Colorado as we end it. Were you surprised that Colorado was able to build like they did when McCartney came in? It took them a while, but they got pretty good.
I don't think so. I think when McCartney came, it was a whole different can of worms. They had an established football team, a bunch of guys that, really wanted to do well, and now they're scrambling around. It's a whole different character of their team, I think, right now than it was when Bill came in.
Does Nebraska have that you saw in Bill McCartney? I know that's also a different scenario with where Nebraska's been in the past compared to where Colorado had been in the past before McCartney. But can you see that now with Rule? Do you see any similarities between McCartney's build and Rule's build?
Well, I don't know that the difference is any different as far as the enthusiasm part and the recruiting part. I mean, Bill was an aggressive recruiter. He was when he was at Michigan, I know, and he knew the ropes then. And he came right in and circled the game, and they started working on playing Nebraska right away. And that was probably one of the best things that he did as far as his players were concerned, because they had something they were aiming at, which I think helped their program.
Was that annoying where you got circled, you were called a rival, and they really hadn't had much success against you?
Well, I don't, going to school there, probably at the time, I thought a little bit about it. But I'll tell you an interesting story if you ever get a chance to talk to John Ferrella. He went to Colorado, and, he came in every day and had a Colorado joke for his team. And I think when you asked John about it, I think he said, "Hey, you're talking about where I came from all the time. Every day it's, something to downgrade Nebraska." And I think that was part of the reason he decided to come back home and go to school at Nebraska, and turned out to be a great player both at Nebraska and in the NFL.
Yeah, that was a recruiting race, and it was a big get for Nebraska for him to come back to Lincoln. Coach, we'll say goodbye, and we'll check in with you on Monday. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Okay, guys. Thanks. Good luck to the baseball team. Keep going. Okay.
Sounds
Talk
good.
to you later. Thanks.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
We're here on the road at Dan Hartog Field here. A little JV baseball going on as Southwest and North Star. And we welcome in Eric Francis, staff photographer with Hail Varsity. So many iconic images captured by Eric through his career and his time with Hail Varsity. And, of course, the yearbook going to have all the photos you want. And get that subscription today to the Hail Varsity yearbook. Subscribe now to the digital, to the print. You love it if you're a Nebraska fan. HailVarsity.com/offer. Eric, thanks for a few minutes, man. How we doing?
Hey, not too bad. Just got done Getting a little sun today out of Big Ten baseball. So
sweating one out, brother.
gosh.
Nebraska able to hang on 9-7. The extra point didn't matter. Kidding. But yeah, 9-7. Nebraska gets the win. Stop me if you've heard this before. We have combined 15 walks.
Yeah.
You have combined 5 beaned batters and combined 18 runners left on base. But it's gritty versus pretty, Eric, and Nebraska got it handled today.
Well,
Yeah.
and not to jump in here on top of you, Eric, but last time I remember Nebraska in a 9-7 sloppy ball game was Iowa State and Nebraska back in October of 2009 with the I think it was 8 fumbles that day.
Yeah,
that was
actually, I was before the game started. I was talking to Scott Brune from the media staff there. We were sitting out front, and I noticed that Rutgers came out in all black. And my first thought was, "What are you doing? It's like 87 degrees, and you're going to wear black out here." But okay. And then I immediately went back to Nebraska's going to win today because last time Rutgers marched out in all black. Nebraska got down, and then they came back and won it. So my prediction held true today.
Well, you were spot on with that. You also host with Brady Oltman's the Eye Test podcast, and I know folks have loved tuning into that with the Hurrdat Family Network of podcasts. You've had Dave Remington on. You've also had Dr. Rob Zadiska. So tell us a little bit more about what the next episode that's supposed to drop has in store. And I know a big emphasis here, this yearbook, Eric, is going to be Memorial Stadium turning 100.
Right. Well, it's, as far as the Eye Test, Brady and I we're having a good time. We're still, I think we're finding our footing pretty well and finding a rhythm. Yeah, we've been lucky. I've gotten to know a lot of people over the years, so from working in the media and just getting to know them. So I've been calling on all those strings, just like you and everybody else does, pulling on those little chords. The last episode just dropped on Tuesday. That one, our guest for that day fell through, so we just walked into the studio and kind of rambled for an hour.
It's all right.
It's I know it's
I do
fun.
that every day.
I was going to say, you guys do it all the time. So it was good. We titled the episode Ramble On. And for those that are, at least this old, they'll get the reference.
Hopefully play the song.
Right. And then we just recorded the other day with Clinton Childs.
Oh, good.
And, if you know Clinton, he's awesome. He's a very quiet dude until he's not. And then he's got a lot to say. So we had a good thing, a good little episode going, talking about the things we like to talk about, all those intangibles around sports and competition and the mental side of the game a little bit more.
Eric, a big talking point today has been not only Husker Baseball, and you've had a chance to be on site for some of those iconic moments with Husker Baseball in your career. Just speak to the fun you've had behind the camera when Nebraska baseball's full throat with the fan base.
Yeah,
just in Omaha.
Yeah, when you started down that setting up that question, my mind, I thought you were going to ask me what was the best baseball moment, and immediately what came to mind was that last game at Buck-Belzer Field, when they were throwing people in wherever they could squeeze them in. They built a little deck, for lack of barely a wooden deck, for the photographers to sit on top of the dugout. Right. And that was a little close to the action, but it was insane that last game of Buck-Belzer when they qualified and went to that first College World Series. And that was, you grew up in Nebraska, and baseball was just something you heard about on the newscast at night. It wasn't something that a lot of people really cared about. And then came that era, and it was a lot of fun for a while.
Eric, as we tie that story back to 100 years of Memorial Stadium. The last game at Buck Belzer, I want you to take me to the first game at Haymarket Park. With Memorial Stadium turning 100, there's been a lot of rumors swirling out there about potential renovations and improvements coming to Memorial Stadium. And from a photographer's point of view, how does that affect you? I'm sure with going and seeing games at Buck Belzer, you have your preferred spots, the spots you like shooting from, and then you got to go learn a new ballpark with Haymarket. And is that anything that worries you with Memorial Stadium, or how does a photographer adjust to when a stadium changes and this awesome spot that you had to shoot the games is now no more, or it's changed? How do you respond to that?
Well, that happens a lot. That, probably the biggest change in that respect was switching from Rosenblatt Stadium over to what they call it, CHI now.
Charles.
Yeah.
Rob, yeah.
So I had grown up in Rosenblatt, and I knew that thing like the back of my hand, every nook and cranny of that place. And so when we went to the new place, there's a lot of truth in what you said, that you have to learn a new place. But it's really, in essence, it's no different than traveling on the road, covering a football game. You get to go to stadiums you've never been to before, and you kind of got to figure it out really quick.
As we talk about potential Memorial Stadium improvements, what would you like to see change to Memorial Stadium? It's an institution, 100 years it's been around. Well, what would you like to see?
Well, from a media member standpoint, or from a fan standpoint, there's kind of two different questions.
Whichever you'd prefer.
From a fan standpoint, I'm sure everybody would love to have some beer. I don't know what I'm not exactly sure how much renovating you could do and still keep the essence of the stadium without a teardown and a complete rebuild, which I don't think anybody would go for. From a media member standpoint, boy, I'd really like to get rid of those LED signs all on the field level. They've ruined more pictures than any other thing than I can imagine down there.
Eric Francis with us, photography, his game, of course, the podcast as well. Staff photographer with Hail Varsity. The Eye Test podcast is where you can listen to Eric and Brady Altman's. Their setup is great as they talk sports, they talk Big Red, they talk pretty iconic moments, and get into the meat and potatoes of all things Nebraska. Eric, we were talking about Colorado, and they're trying to keep the red out for Dion's home opener, and that didn't go well today, and I don't think it's going to go well for September 9th.
It is not going to go well.
It's going to go well for Nebraska and you, when you're taking pictures of a Folsom field all wearing red again. But as far as a road venue, Notre Dame, Colorado, Norman, Rose Bowl, I mean, what's an iconic road spot you've been to?
As far as my Boulder, I was having this conversation with somebody else a couple of days ago. Boulder is beautiful. The view is beautiful. The stadium's easy to shoot in. I really like grass fields. They make great pictures when the chunks of turf are flying up in the air, and I love that kind of stuff. Notre Dame was really good. Of course, it's been nice since we got into the Big Ten to click off some of those iconic venues off the bucket list. The Big House was one I finally got to get to last year because it eluded me as we scheduled things every year. So, yeah, the Orange Bowl, just from an iconic and the history that Nebraska made there. The stadium itself, Tempe was great.
Yeah, but Tempe was
awesome. I think they're still scoring.
No, I know that was a good time. The only freaky part of that was the coin flip guy.
Right. Right.
Old Kaz flipping the coin to get the Fiesta Bowl going. But no, I mean that's just it. What's down the road for you? The issue that just came out really a focus on photography. Give folks a little look.
Yeah, we decided to do our little year in review from a picture standpoint, and the little spin we put on it was kind of like the turning points of the year for some of the different sports, and trying to show it with pictures rather than doing a pretty traditional write-up on it. So that was fun to do. The process of choosing pictures, the process of deciding what were turning points. We leaned on our beat writers for some of the things. Some of them were plain as day. Mm-hmm. Football, a trip to Ireland and a game against Georgia Southern was pretty much the turning points of the season for football.
Eric, do you have a favorite photo that Hail Varsity took this year? It doesn't have to be your own, but something tells me it's going to be your own.
It's not always my own. I should probably put some more thought into what my favorite photo of the year was, because I've been thinking about it in not just like an artistic standpoint, but also like in the context of the year. What comes to mind is the picture of Scott at the Georgia Southern game that wound up being that issue's cover. I'd been working and waiting for that moment for like 3 football games. And I knew there would be a moment when he would show us that he realized it was over. Wow. And I honestly think I caught the moment he realized fully 100% that it was his time at Nebraska was over. And it's aesthetically, it's not like the most amazing photo, but the context of the moment and history, it kind of gives it a little extra.
Eric Francis with us. Eric, thanks for a few minutes, man. Always fun to catch up with you. Appreciate it.
Always, anytime.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Dr. Brandon Seifert with us. Dr. Brandon, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, Chris. How are you, sir?
We're good. We're out at the old ballpark as we're getting ready, or we're in the midst of some Legion baseball. So I'm sneaking in and trying to do 2 things at once. And Aaron Rodgers he's been a story of the offseason. A lot of high hopes for the New York Jets fans and a lot of intrigue with, all right, he's headed to a new team for the first time in his career. He missed some practice this week with a minor calf strain. Let's talk a little bit about that with Rodgers, his age, as he's pushing 40, Dr. Brandon, and just how lingering this could be. I don't expect it to be an issue for the regular season, but he's missing time with his new mates.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we think about where this injury occurred, again, we're kind of based on what the media is telling us, but with his injury, sounds like he was hopping on some type of medicine ball, doing some type of warm-up routine that the whole team was doing, and then suddenly, sustained some pain, injury into his calf or his gastroc. If we think about this anatomically, so we're all familiar with what calf musculature is. If you feel below your knee, kind of on the back side of your knee, into that soft tissue mass, called your calf muscles. We call it the gastroc. And there's actually 2 main muscle bellies in the backside of the leg. There's what we call the medial gastroc, that's on the inside. The other belly is the lateral gastroc. And that'd be where these are. And that'd be where basically the calf strain comes from when somebody mentions that term. You could even incorporate some of the lower calf musculature. So as you kind of feel below that really thickened part just below the knee, there's another kind of flatter part below that called the soleus musculature that's kind of involved in the calf region as well. So somewhere on that continuum is where the injury occurred. Most of the time these are fairly benign. They tended to recur some, but just based on the fact that he was still out on the field after the injury occurred and is not talking it up too much, I think hopefully this will be a pretty quick recovery for him.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us here at Jock Doc Wednesday, talking Aaron Rodgers and the calf injury he sustained at Jets OTAs. And Dr. Brandon, from what I'm hearing there, sounds like this isn't too major of an injury, but from a doctor's point of view, do you believe in bad omens? The fact that this happened so early in his Jets tenure, is that a real thing in medical industry?
Of course, he's wearing the wrong green jersey, right? Yes, that's interesting. Honestly, with these, you do have to be careful with these. So one of the things you got to be careful is you look at a guy like him. He's got the miles on him, of course. Age is getting up there. What's kind of the dreaded thing you think about for us, weekend warriors out there, even though he's not a weekend warrior, would be an injury to the Achilles. And so that's obviously in the ballpark here. If you basically follow that musculature, the calf musculature, down to the ankle on the backside of your heel or your calcaneus, obviously the Achilles tendon is there. The Achilles travels up and spreads out and hooks into those calf muscles. And so that's all kind of one continuum. And so that is the thing you do worry about. And as we age, you're at a higher risk of injuring that, even in a high-level athlete. And so even though this may not be a huge deal, at least right now, that is something to be concerned about. And that's where some of the precaution will come in, is you really want to make sure that's healed up well. You want to make sure that his flexibility is appropriate. And, of course, making sure he does an excellent job of working on his flexibility, making sure he stays in shape, making sure that he does warm up well before games, because that can be a concern for somebody in his scenario.
Dr. Brandon, I'm glad you brought us back to seriousness there, and I'm going to go on a serious note here. Still, 2 months out from the start of the season, a little under 2 months from the start of training camp, a little over 2 months from the actual start of the season. Is this going to be too much of a concern for the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, or is this something that rest, relaxation, give him a couple weeks off is going to be able to nip in the bud pretty early?
Yeah, I think so, Elijah. I think that this will be something he kind of recovers from pretty quickly. They'll probably cut back on some of the training exercises he's doing. But it is tough, trying to figure out how to pick and choose which kind of preseason strength training, plyometrics, conditioning programs you do for some of your older players is tough. I don't think there's a perfect answer to that. Obviously, there's data and studies to kind of back up one direction versus the other, and so that will make it challenging for him. But I do think you have to have, for some of your older players that have a lot of miles on them, you really do need to have kind of a tailored kind of workout routine for them, probably not doing just the standard stuff that the rest of the younger players are doing.
Dr. Brandon, the weird warm-up was kind of circled here. This is the first time in his career he's used a medicine ball to warm up like he did. I'm going to go back to a silly question, because I liked where Elijah was at. Will this require a darkness retreat?
It might. Maybe digging something up out in the field and maybe burying something. Who knows?
Right.
I tell you who I would want to be right now would be the sports trainer that recommended this for him.
Yeah, there's science behind it in the story here. There's a quote. There's science behind it.
I'm imagining that the conversation with Aaron Rodgers before is him like, I'm not sure about this whole warm up here, and the guy goes, "Oh no, trust me, I know it's weird, but you're into that. It's okay. We're gonna be perfectly fine here." Like, I'm just imagining how that conversation went.
Kind of reminds me of that moment off Major League when Dorn breaks out his contract.
Right. No, that's where I just thought of that. And you said it. That is so good, Dr. Brandon, where he walks up to old Sweet Lou and I don't have to do any unnecessary calisthenics if I don't want. And, well, we know what happened with the contract.
That may have played out at the end of practice that day.
Yeah, exactly. Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. A Jock Doc Wednesday, a calf strain for Aaron Rodgers. And as we wrap up here, Dr. Brandon, just a thought on the flexibility that guys, especially at the quarterback position, really invest in. I look at Tom Brady. He's more of a band guy versus a weight guy. I don't know what Aaron Rodgers' routine is, but they're both pretty flexible guys. They're more kind of lanky than they are just bricked, if that makes sense. And it's really kept their arm pretty fresh through their career.
Yeah, absolutely. The science really going into those programs is pretty amazing. The hard part about that is, even despite all the resources being poured into those things, career longevity, and that relates over not just to professional athletes, but to us in general, us old guys now. How do you apply that? But when you look at all those studies that are out there, it's a little bit frustrating in a sense. There's kind of some mixed results on those studies in terms of which of those kind of stretching routines, what's the appropriate strengthening routine. Obviously, you've got the weight-bearing versus band therapy program people and kind of the two different camps. And so it's hard sometimes sorting all that stuff out. I think it is really appropriate, as one does age, especially when you're talking about these professional athletes, is you definitely have got to have an appropriate rest. Once that season ends, trying to squeeze in maybe a few more days of some rest, during the week is important as well. So I think those things are all critical. But again, being able to maintain an appropriate kind of strength balance along with the flexibility is really huge.
Dr. Brandon Seifert with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Dr. Brandon, thanks for a few minutes today. Always appreciate catching up with you.
All right, fellas. Thank you. Take care.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, we're here at Dan Hartog Field. JV baseball going on, a bit of a road show for me. Southwest and North Star, Schmidt and Elijah Herbel. We are at Rosie's tomorrow, and it has turned into an incredible watch party as we'll be on 4 to 6, leading up to Nebraska v. Maryland. Husker Baseball gets it done. It was a bit of a roller coaster per Will Bolt, but Nebraska able to, as he put it, stay in the fight. Nebraska able to hang on 9-7. They jumped out 3-0. Rutgers tied things at 3, forged ahead with some sloppy pitching and defense 6-3, and then Nebraska hung a crooked number on Rutgers in the 6th spot. One tacked on by Rutgers, but Nebraska able to take care of it. Will Walsh bouncing back and able to give Nebraska some good innings as he came in to be a bit of a fireman, if you will, for Nebraska. Nebraska did enough offensively. They did work with the long ball. They also left 11 runners on. Their runners in scoring position average was nothing to brag about today. Both teams, from a walks and hit batters standpoint, pretty brutal. Rutgers with 9 walks and 4 hit batters. Nebraska was not as sloppy pitching, but wasn't great. And we'll see what tomorrow brings, Elijah. 6 o'clock, Nebraska, Maryland. And we're at Rosie's downtown, 10th and Peak. Come see us and hang out. Be a part of it as we get you ready for Nebraska, Maryland at Rosie's downtown, 4 to 6, with first pitch a little bit after 6 o'clock. Come be there, get a cold one, and celebrate. Hey, it's a great time of year. Nebraska able to get out of their own way enough and get a win. And we'll see how Maryland likes hitting in a full-size ballpark. We'll see what Maryland pitching shows up, and we'll see if Nebraska's offense can keep the bats going and bring some stability throwing the ball on the hill tomorrow.
And if there's any positive to take away from today besides the win?
You won. That's the positive.
Well, if there's any positive besides that, it's the fact that you really only burned one pitcher. Shanneman, Kyle Perry, and Will Walsh. You'd expect all of them probably don't need that much rest coming off how many pitches they threw. Will Walsh might be the guy who needs a day off before he might be ready to pitch again. But Shea and Kyle Perry both stayed, I believe, below 20 pitches in their outings today. I could be wrong by a couple pitches there, but you would think those guys would be ready to be back in short order. So you burn one in the starter with Emmett Olson. You don't think he's going to be ready to pitch for a couple days, but the bullpen still looks like it's relatively fresh. So that could be a positive moving forward for this Husker baseball team as they try to make it further and further into this Big Ten tournament.
Big thanks today to Mike Babcock and Eric Francis and Charlie McBride as we caught up with them. Dr. Brandon Seifert with the Jock Doc. Tomorrow on the show, we are going to run down Gary Barnett. We'll spend time with Barney. We'll have Evan Bland with us. Evan usually with us on Wednesday. Of course, he was at Charles Schwab Field. So Evan will join us in the 5 o'clock hour tomorrow. We'll also spend time with Brandon Vogel. Podcast is where you go for Hail Varsity Radio. You can get Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for the audio, the segments you want to hear, or the full show available. And, of course, the video portion of the show with Hail Varsity, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel and Hail Varsity Radio at H Varsity Radio. Catch us in the afternoon. And Coffee and Cream, Damon and Andrew, weekday morning, 7 to 10. We'll be back at you tomorrow, live at Rosie's downtown. Watch party for Nebraska baseball at 4. And we'll see you there with Hail Varsity, presented by Currency.